it was still live.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that was
stop
funny.
it! You did such a bad job.
Just
Everyone
yelling
now
at
just
each
heard.
other.
We're kidding, y'all.
We are live.
We are.
Yay!
Yay, we're here. Hello,
No
we've
one
made
did a
it.
bad job. My scrupulosity is like on fire right now.
Traffic was horrible. Hi, if you're just joining us, it is Tuesday, August 1st. It is 7:02 p.m. on the East Coast. It's 4:02 p.m. on Chris's coast. And then everybody else is somewhere. And Valerie's coast. Yes, I always forget.
No, it's Chris's coast. Valerie just lives here.
Chris, Val lives in my zip code. If you're just joining us, please say hi. Let us know you're here. And we always like to give a shout out. And with that, we always like to give a couple minutes for people to get the notification that we've gone live and immediately drop everything and run to the computer and turn us on, which we know is happening right now. So we'll just give y'all a few minutes. Oh, Cash is in the house. I just pulled it up. You know, Cash, I never actually knew where you were from exactly. Grimsby, England.
Oh, cool. I think anywhere outside of the United States is cool. I don't know why.
Matt Bannister in the house. For a minute there, it was like 100% UK audience. I like it. Mike Sizemore, Felice.
Sorry to interrupt, but apparently, and everyone gets to listen to me say this now. Apparently, we can now join the chat from our end on StreamYard.
Wait, actually?
Yeah,
Yes,
I just learned, like, you can connect your YouTube account and you can comment from here. I'm so excited.
Same.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, I was just setting it up. That's super
I'm so
cool.
excited.
Yep, there it is. I'm going to try it. That's very exciting.
Does it work?
I don't know. It's loading. Hi, Deirdre. The comment has failed to post to internet. Failed.
What did it say?
It said, I just said hi.
I said hi too. Mine is still loading. Oh, this comment has failed to post.
All right. To be problem solved later. I love Lana. Hey, Denise and Amy. Everybody's in the house. Matt Bannister, remind me to tell you something funny. I'll tell it real quick and then we'll get started. So I did a community conversation last week, and Matt, who lives in the UK, like he left a comment right at the end, and he's like, you know, I hope y'all have a great rest of your evening. And I got off and I was like, y'all, he's been going to way too many live streams with us in the Southeast because like he's in the UK. And it was really funny, Matt, that you used y'all. I ran down to Katie. I'm like, Katie's been listening to us way too much. He said y'all. So anyway, all right. So welcome. We'll go ahead and get started. As we go through housekeeping, please continue to say hello and let us know you're here. It's going to be a really engaging and fun conversation. We have an awesome group of panelists, all our lead and national advocates and board members and everything in between. Chris, Val, Katie, and Tom. We are all here tonight to join you in. Oh, it worked. Katie got it to work. Okay. That's fine.
I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm amazed because it's been years that we've been on here that we haven't been able to do that. So that's
yeah.
cool.
We usually have to log in. So with that, let me get through some housekeeping, and then it works now, and then we'll get started with the conversation. So welcome to tonight's town hall. We will be talking conference wrap up or a conference recap, and then we thought we'd get into some stigma conversation. Of course, we are always happy to field your questions and answer anything you have on OCD and related disorders or anything in between. My name is Ethan Smith. I'm a national advocate for the IOCDF. This town hall is intended to serve as educational content and is not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. I see Chris smirking, so it's I don't know. There's something good juicy.
I figured out how to do comments, so I'm
very
amused by
exciting.
myself.
Yeah, it's like 3 years in. The International OCD Foundation is not a crisis hotline. If you are in crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. Thank you. We want to create a safe space to be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're all here to support one another. And a note, this is being broadcast on several social media platforms and is being broadcast and recorded. So always keep that in mind as we talk about very personal and vulnerable topics. Anyway, we should also talk about Chris's YouTube picture.
Oh yeah, it's like I don't know how to change it, and it's a picture from like literally like 15 years ago, probably at this point. So I need to change it. I don't know how.
That's amazing. I see Liz Smith. Oh, my mom's here. Hi, Mom. Okay, so with that, I want to welcome everybody. As always, please feel free to populate the comments with questions or thoughts, and we'll pull them in as we have the conversation, obviously opening it up to Q&A toward the end. But first, first question to you all actually is, let us know if you were at the conference in San Francisco. Just say I was there, and feel free to put in the chat your favorite part of the conference in San Francisco. And maybe let's just start by going around. It was an amazing conference. It really felt like the first conference post-COVID where everybody was just kind of like ready to be together. We had over 1,800 attendees from over 43 states and territories, and I think 13 countries. So it was wonderfully attended. So I'll start with actually Valerie. Valerie, how was your conference experience, and what were some of your highlights?
Well, it was great. It felt different from previous years. Maybe the absence made it feel a little different. I was super excited being from the West Coast that everybody was coming our way. I think my favorite part, of course, is always meeting people from my Facebook pages and people that have sent me emails and all of those things. And it's hard to kind of narrow down what I think right now was my favorite part, other than being there and being in my side of the world.
Well, we love to see you, Val, and it was really, really great to just see everyone and hug. And yeah, it's always fun when it's on the West Coast. Chris, I know you were pulling triple duty as a lead advocate, of board member, and just being on 432 panels. And we know everyone loved to see you. What were some of your highlights of the conference?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I always love about the conference is seeing people connect. And I was seeing so many like first time people hugging each other in the lobby of the hotel that had connected with each other on social media and had been collaborating online or talking to each other for so long. And there was like people crying in the conference because they met each other for the first time. I mean, this conference for me is always community. And what I'm excited about talking today, because I know you guys have talked about like the conference wrap up, is all the connections that you can continue to make throughout the year until the next conference. So I think the conference is like the big shebang. You got to go to it. But I mean, all of us have become friends because of stuff to do between the conference. So I think that's what's exciting, is people in the years past, when we first would go to the conference, you'd have such a good time at the conference, and then you're in this kind of like sadness for a year or two. You got to see everyone again. Now it's like you got to see everybody in person, but through other means you get to connect with people. So I'm excited. And I know that the IOCDF is premiering Maria Bamford's keynote live, I think tomorrow, on their YouTube. So I think people get to see it if they weren't there. I'm excited.
And if you haven't tuned in, it's absolutely hysterical. Maria Bamford, very well-known comedian and also individual with OCD and related disorders, but really was, if you've been to other keynotes and been like, oh, those are boring, or I slept through it, like, you'll think this is funny, or it will trigger you. But either way, it'll be worth the 45 minutes. So Tom was also running around, had his anxiety and athletes booth next to the IOCDF, multiple panels and talks. And what were some of your highlights from the conference?
I think my highlight was really just being we talked about, Ethan, that I love the panels, obviously are tremendous. And I love being able to share my story and share with you guys and share with other people in the community. But I think those one-on-one conversations in the hallways between panels, and in the morning before panels start, and at night, I know me and Chris end up in the lobby every year on a Saturday night until 2 a.m. just talking in the lobby. The restaurant in the lobby usually like has to kick us out because we're just sitting there chatting, catching up. And I think as much as I love all the glitz and glamour of the conference, I think that one-on-one connection with individuals in our community is really what's so special to me.
Absolutely. And we love those late night conversations for sure as well. Real quick, Felice, I want to recognize your comment about the IOCDF discussion on Tourette's OCD. I know we've talked about it in the past. We keep a running document of subjects that people want to talk about and try to cycle through all of them. So we'll definitely make a note of that and stay tuned, Felice, on that. So thank you. Also, I'll actually let Katie answer this question, and then I would love to hear your highlights, Katie. But at 7:10 p.m., Amy asks, if I go next year, what can I learn from the conference as a mom of a young adult with OCD? Are there resources for families and caregivers of people with OCD?
Yes, 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 yes is my biggest answer. Yes, from panels to lots of different groups, both for parents and for loved ones, but also for young adults. I actually work with a bunch of folks who came this year as young adults for the first time, actually with their parents, where the parents had entirely different programming to go to and how to support their loved ones, and the young adults did as well. So lots of resources and community connection. But I also want to note that you do not have to wait for next year for that either, that we do have the virtual conference coming up in just a couple months, which will also have a lot of those groups and that programming as well. So lots to learn, but also the connections that we're talking about. I've talked with a lot of folks as parents of young adults or really any individual with OCD that have been able to walk away from the conference, not just with information, but with connections and with other parents that they're able to continue to engage in dialogue with. And it's really the community aspect that kind of feeds into the most significant thing for me. I'm getting excited just sitting here even talking about it because the conference for me was so amazing this year. Yes, panels were great and speaking and hanging out with all of these awesome humans on the live stream, but really meeting so many of you and even folks I'm seeing in the chat tonight was so amazing. And especially faith and OCD initiatives have grown a lot these past few years. And we also recently started a helping professionals with OCD SIG. And there are people between those two areas and between support groups that I've worked with for like a year and a half or 2 years and never met in real life. And the feeling of getting to run across the lobby and scream and be like, it's you. Oh my goodness, we've built this awesome programming together and we can actually see each other in person is just so, so, so incredibly special. And then the continued connections again afterward. And this year in particular, I've gotten so many emails from folks who went to the conference for the very first time and were inspired and saw either that they could plug into programming that exists following the conference or that they could create something new. So I've had emails from folks who want to start poetry groups or who want to start, things that they don't see happening, but have started to recognize through the conference that they have a voice to be able to start new groups, to start new initiatives. And I know all of us are honored to be a part of those conversations that branch off from the conference moving forward. So I'll stop rambling. I love you all, and it was lovely, and I'm still very excited about it.
Absolutely. And you didn't ramble. I share everyone, Chris, Val's, Tom's, and Katie's sentiments about the conference. I think we all share. I think we could all, share the exact same things that we love about the conference. The only thing that I'll add two things is, what makes the IOCDF conference so unique is the fact that it's a multifaceted audience. And, I never went to conferences. My job doesn't require that. So, my first conferences were the IOCDF conferences. I didn't realize that most conferences you go to, you don't have caregivers, doctors, researchers, clinicians, individuals, patients, sufferers, and then brothers, sisters, nephews, cousins, former roommates, the whole thing. And so that's what makes this conference also uniquely special, is if you're a caregiver or someone that knows someone with OCD, or you have OCD or related disorder, and you're looking for advice, care, treatment, we always say no one is off limits. If you go to the conference and you're a extremely well-known and world-renowned doctor or clinician in your field, like, people will come up to you, people will talk to you, ask you questions, and you have to be nice and answer. That's the general rule. And so, I love the word access when it comes to conferences, because I think it allows you access to some individual. If there's a doctor you've been trying to get into that you haven't been able to, go to the conference, say hi, be like, listen, I need help. Chris sent me. I really love that fact that everybody's approachable and kind and just wants to support wherever anyone is. And that makes the conference really special as well. So
I like how nobody said our panel together. I should have said that.
So I actually thought we'd feed into that because it's some of what I know we're going to talk about tonight. But I will say, for anyone who, I guess probably lots of folks on here weren't at the conference or at our panel. So we had a group panel together on stigma, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that tonight and stigma around OCD in the media. And that was a highlight for me, just getting to talk with these amazing humans up here. But we also had kind of an interactive presentation. Gosh, Ethan. So we were able to kind of see what a lot of people in the audience were experiencing at the same time, which was really cool. And that's a lot of tonight, what we're going to talk about of some stigma that we've seen in the last year and responses to it.
Absolutely, Katie. The only thing I wanted to add on was, again, the virtual conference, which I think is September 24th.
Wow. It's
No,
October
that's-
21st and 22nd.
That's correct. Actually, the Spanish conference is September 24th. I got my conferences confused. But the
Wait, which conference is September 21st?
The Spanish conference.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah.
It's virtual's in October, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the weekend of October 21st and 22nd.
Yes, Ethan.
And if you want to learn about all the conferences, you can visit iocdf.com/conferences, and they'll list all the conferences for you. But I think, the virtual conference was birthed out of COVID, and it was one of the silver linings from COVID. And the IOCDF has done an amazing job of really giving you a sense that you're at the conference, right? It's not just presentations. It's not just watching. There's interaction. You can chat with other people. You can Zoom with attendees. They've got a really cool system where you can see if someone's online and message them, in addition to all the Q&As and the benefits of going to the conference. So it's obviously a much more accessible way if the in-person isn't near you, or we know travel is very expensive. So we'll be talking lots more about the virtual conference, and thank you for posting the link, Brennan. We'll be talking more about the virtual conference, but it really is as close to being there as you can get, and we're really excited to see what this year brings. So so before we transition, anything else we want to note about this year's conference in San Francisco? Any other highlights, or does anybody else in the chat that maybe attended want to share anything that they really enjoyed?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, Ethan, the accessibility. You were saying how you don't get to go to a lot of conferences. Like for my field, I do. And I would say that this is unique about the IOCDF conference, is it is everyone's there. Because other conferences might only be for clinicians, et cetera. But I think the access, I've been to other conferences where you'll have a speaker who's written books, and it's a mental health conference, and he's written these books about couples and whatever, and he'll like speak and then disappear. I mean, we had Maria Bamford, our keynote, going to different talks, going to different support groups. You have some of the top, I remember seeing John Hirschfeld and John Grayson just like sitting in the lobby talking, and like people are coming up to them. Like, you don't get that access. I think sometimes if people have been to our conference and only that, just assume all conferences are like that. It really isn't. So the accessibility, and I would argue even for the virtual conference as well, there's opportunities to like message some of the speakers. So I think that's huge if you have if you have a loved one who's made so much progress because of someone's books or work or podcast, you can actually go up to that person and have a conversation with them, which is super unique. Except Ethan, he has security. He has you can't even get near him.
Actually, to be honest, this year I was invisible compared to Katie, and I almost got trampled multiple times as people ran over me to get to Katie.
Yeah, Katie was a star at this conference.
I was just wearing pink, so I stuck out more easily, I think was the issue, because everybody knew I was wearing pink. But I'll say, just as everybody up here are just my favorite humans. And I guess as we're talking about this, one of the things that's still coming up for me as we think about conferences, I remember even just a couple of years ago, and I said this a couple of times actually at the conference in 2018 or 2019, going to the conference and sitting and watching presentations and watching these folks that I'm up here with speaking now and thinking, I will never get better from OCD. I will never be at a place to speak. I will never be at a place to advocate. And OCD was so lying to me in that space. And I think selfishly, for me, advocacy, all of you inspire me each and every day to continue to work through things that are really hard in my OCD. And the conference this year, like last year, was a really full circle experience for me to really think, wow, I've come a long way in my OCD. And also to think every single person, I believe, has that opportunity to move towards the big, beautiful, awesome, value-driven life that they were created to live. And all of you also inspired me this year at the conference. That there was one presentation I was doing that I ended up speaking about things that I had never spoken about before and that I really didn't plan to talk about during the conference that related outside of OCD to some traumatic experiences. And the reason I felt so comfortable in doing that was because all of you and because of your vulnerability and because of everyone there. And I walked away, gosh, feeling so supported by the community, even just in my conference talk, just because all of you are so special in how you support us just as much as we get to support you.
Thank you, Katie. Actually, I'm going to ask a one more question about the conference, and I'm gonna words at the end of the day. We should have these at like 9 in the morning, where my head is filled.
All of our meetings, see, what people don't know is all of our meetings are 9 Val and my time. And then any of the afternoon meetings I have with people are like, oh my God, you have so much energy. You're so upbeat. You're not like that in the morning meetings. Of course not. Who is? So
yeah, it's almost as good as when you call me at 9 or 10 your time, Chris, and it's like 12 or 1 my time. I'm like, hello.
It's a great. Before I direct this to Val, and then we'll get into stigma. Phyllis's statement actually at 7:22 p.m. If you don't mind me posting this, Phyllis, and reading this aloud. I feel so socially awkward and introverted. I wonder if I would be able to connect at the conference. And that's such a great question, or at least statement. You know, I'll throw this out to Tom, who I think would be able to weigh in a little bit on your concerns.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's people and groups for everybody at the conference, and I think if you're suffering from OCD, and even if you feel socially awkward and introverted, I remember my first conference when I was in LA, and I think it was like 2015 or whatnot, 2014. I know I said a thought out that was an intrusive thought that I was having out loud in a support group, and immediately 7 hands shot up in the air and said, "Oh my gosh, I had that same thought." And so that's a really, really good summary of what the conference is about and how the conference is. There's no cliques. There's no exclusion. It's the most inclusive place in the world. And they make you really feel welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely. People go out of their way to make connections, and you're not alone in that. In fact, you know, there are many advocates, IOCDF advocates, that express concerns about social anxiety and feeling introverted. I would say a lot of our community feels that way, and so do we, frankly, at many times. And the reality is, you know, everybody wants to make connections and go up and make sure that people are okay and comfortable and happy, and so, you know, that is of the utmost importance to all of us. And so, you know, I would venture to say that you know, everybody would go out of their way to try to make you feel safe and comfortable and feel like, you know, that is your home and you have a safe space at the conference, for sure. Real quick, I wanted to direct this to Val, because I noticed a little difference at this conference, and I think, and then we can let Chris, Katie, and Tom weigh in. But I noticed an uptick in diversity this year, where I hadn't seen it before. And we have a long way to go, mind you, but I spoke to so many individuals from so many diverse backgrounds, ethnicities, locations. I'd love to get your input and insight into what you felt this conference was like compared to last conference from a diverse perspective.
It was definitely different. I noticed it immediately once I got to the conference. And for me, having to have my first conference in 2017, and then to be back there, 5, 6 years later, I could really feel the difference. I could feel the difference even within my own emotions. That I was excited. The first year I went, which is how I really started my advocacy, was because I could count on one hand, 2 at the most, how many people of color I seen. I couldn't count them this year. And of course, we have a long way to go. But I was excited because not only did I see older people, but I seen young women, I seen young guys, and that was very inspirational to me to see that we're making some dent. And there was a little bit more diversity related classes also, but the field was completely different it felt more inclusive.
Yep. And I love that you feel that, because I think, I mean, Chris can speak as a board member, but, you know, obviously inclusivity and our initiatives around increasing awareness and, you know, involving and making people in diverse communities, marginalized communities, you know, all the communities aware of the organization, that it is a safe space for individuals to raise awareness and break stigma, you know, is a top priority for the IOCDF. I don't know, Chris, if you want to weigh in a little bit on what Val had to say.
Yeah, I know for me, as a clinician, I mean, we know that OCD doesn't discriminate. OCD affects and impacts people of all ages, different races, ethnicities, socioeconomic classes. And we don't want the conference to only represent one group of people impacted by the disorder. We need to make sure that we are doing everything we can in our power as a foundation to instill that belief that everybody impacted by OCD has a place here. I love I was on a talk with Jelani Daniel, with Marcia Rabinowitz, with Dr. Jenny Yip and myself, and we were talking about how clinicians can be more inclusive in their treatment for the LGBTQ community, for Black and African-American individuals, for Asian American, for Latinx population. And we know that there's so much additional stigma. I know we're going to talk a lot about stigma in a second. There's additional stigma in different minority groups and different marginalized communities, et cetera. And so one of the things that I do like about the foundation is I don't feel like diversity is an afterthought. I think the things that Monica Williams has done with her research, I'm so glad she got an award this year. She's part of the DEI Action Council with Jenny Yip, and there's a lot of great people on that. The work that Val and Katie, of course, are doing for individuals of faith. I mean, there's so many initiatives to ensure that. And I know for me, shout out to Kyle King. He needed somebody to help him run a young adult game night. And I think what Val was saying, that was very noticeable to me when I helped run the game night. It was like it was so much more diverse than we've ever had for young adult events. So I think, you know, for the LGBTQ special interest group, we had so many more people than we've ever had at an event, at a conference. So I hope that the foundation, I believe they will, because it's big and important to them. I hope we continue to ensure that, because we got to make sure that everybody everywhere, international, despite background, is getting resources and help, so they don't have to suffer from this insidious disorder any longer than they need to.
And kind of to follow up, it reminded me of what the last question was about staying in your room. I kind of felt that my first conference in 2017, I didn't feel as comfortable in my skin, I would say, in 2017. Today, last conference, it didn't play a part at all as far as me feeling that. And that was what I noticed. It was a different vibe. It was more feeling of being heard, like Chris said, not being the afterthought, which I kind of felt like in 2017. I didn't feel that know everybody is doing and behind the scenes, and what we're doing as lead advocates to bring that diversity, more to the front. So. Yeah, I just wanted to say that it reminded me of being stuck in the room my first time around, as opposed to this time. It's like, oh, wow, that's this. This is this. I'm going all over to all different groups and resources and research things and just people in general. And it was completely different. I didn't spend any time in my room this time around.
And we're glad, because we like hanging out with you.
Tom and Val, I want to let you weigh. I mean, Tom and Katie, I want to let you weigh on the subject, and then we'll kind of transition over into stigma.
I'll just echo what Chris and Val said. It was so beautiful this year, just the level of diversity in so many different areas. And I know Chris also mentioned the religious component, and I loved, even with our Faith and OCD SIG, and we had kind of a Faith and OCD booth for the IOCDF this year, the amount of folks that came by from different faith backgrounds and religious backgrounds that were talking about scrupulosity and what talking about faith and OCD looks like with their faith leaders, and we're feeling comfortable to do so, was just really amazing, and something I know Val and I, along with some other faith and OCD task force members, have been striving for the last couple of years. And that was so neat to really see that coming to fruition and seeing folks comfortable talking about these topics. And then especially in the faith and OCD SIG, I was just, my interfaith heart was like beaming because we've gotten to little small groups, and I was looking at each group that was working on advocacy stuff, and each group had probably 3 different faith traditions represented within the group. And I was watching, and folks were turning and saying, okay, we came up with the same stuff, but through different lenses, and how this might be an appropriate way to do this in our community, and how this might, we might do this in a culturally responsive way. And it was just so neat to see those really genuine, authentic interfaith conversations happening in the midst of scrupulosity and faith and OCD. And I could go on about that forever. But it was really, really beautiful, just the diversity on all of these different levels.
Go ahead, Tom.
Tough to follow that up, but I think just echoing whatever each person on our panel tonight has said about the conference is different backgrounds, different SIGs. I know for myself, it was really exciting. We had the most anxiety and athlete support group members we've had at any conference. We had over 25, so that was really exciting. And then seeing how many people were here for the faith and scrupulosity, and then I know I connected somebody from Mexico City with one of our other advocates. So it's just exciting seeing like all these people from different countries and different areas coming around and coming together for the same cause and the same mission.
Absolutely. And with that, at the conference, this group, along with Liz McInvale, who couldn't be here tonight, we gave a presentation on stigma and stigma in the media specifically, and went over a lot of examples. And we all feel that, and I'm sure you all feel as well, that that being stigmatized isn't any fun, that OCD and related disorders is one of the more, if not the most stigmatized of the mental illnesses. And I don't say that as a badge of honor or a win. It has the unique position of being in everybody's vocabulary. Everybody seems to know the word OCD and associate it with something that it usually is not, right? And so and it has that distinction where other mental illnesses and other illnesses, frankly, don't have. A lot of people don't go around saying, I'm so cancer, because they don't have hair or something like that. So, dealing with stigma, how to address stigma, how to feel about stigma, process the feelings around stigma, especially in the media, whether it's traditional media, social media, digital media, radio, television, film, or even just around the house, in the office, family, friends. We think this is one of the most important topics to discuss. So we thought we'd continue the conversation here and discuss some examples of places that we've seen stigma in the media and sort of addressing those things. But also I want to throw the question out to all of you. How have you, or please, if you want to give an example of a time that you felt stigmatized in the media or by a social post, or perhaps if you would share by a coworker or a family member. You don't have to use names or anything, but we'd love to talk about that, perhaps give you insight on how to navigate that. And we can, of course, share our own stories about times that we felt similar. But I would love to hear your we would love to hear your examples about your own experiences with stigma and how you navigated and times you felt that. Katie, you're not, I always typically go with the hardest nodder, and you tend to be nodding emphatically. So I'd like to know what you're thinking.
Oh, well, I was nodding both at you, and then also Bonnie was making a lot of noise back here. So I was just trying to stay engaged while muted, if I'm fully honest. But no, I mean, so I loved getting to do this particular talk with this crew, and I'm thinking about, gosh, I think we'll probably get into some specific examples, but I think one of the difficult things, and Elise is speaking to this right now, obsessive chocolate disorder, obsessive cup disorder, all of these different things that we see all the time that are not funny, that are, people know the word OCD, to Ethan's point, and they hear it all the time, but might not actually know what it means. And it can be incredibly, incredibly harmful. And I think for me, this has been such a journey, and I know we'll get into specific examples, but just, I guess what I was really thinking as Ethan was speaking about this journey that I've gone on from not knowing how to respond to responding always with a lot of frustration to responding from a space of education and trying to figure out what that looks like in different scenarios. And that's some of what we discussed in our chat. I remember early on when I first started coming out in my kind of public role in school chaplaincy about having OCD, some people really got it and had a lot of respect for the fact that I was speaking out for my students. And others were calling me the OCD chaplain and were saying like, of course she's so organized. Of course her desk is all put together. Or of course she's able to do 50 different things. She has OCD. And I felt so incredibly stigmatized, but I didn't know how to respond to it at that particular time. It was, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to make them feel bad, even though really what I'm navigating is intrusive thoughts and worrying that I'm a horrible person or going to hell or that I'm a murderer. You really have no idea what this looks like. But over time, I think I shifted into getting kind of pissed every single time, which is okay and which is valid, and being like, no, you don't know what OCD is. And realizing that I think everyone has different responses. But for me, that wasn't particularly effective either. It wasn't authentic to who I was. And kind of finding this middle ground in these different spaces of being able to say, okay, that really hurt. I can acknowledge that. And I also want to tell you what OCD actually is from a space of learning. And I love the idea in lots of different areas of calling in versus calling out. And the first time something comes up, maybe with a colleague or with a neighbor or with a coworker, it might be a really great time to call in and to say, hey, we can have this conversation. Let me educate you. And I've had experiences where I've been able to do that and someone apologizes and goes on to advocate or to share their experience of what OCD is with others. But then there are these other things that I know we're going to be talking about over the last year, maybe with bigger organizations or folks who have done this over and over again after being corrected, where it can be time to call out, where it can be time as a community, still respectfully, but to say, this is not okay. This is harming our community. This is preventing people from seeking treatment. This is preventing people from getting evidence-based life-saving treatment. And we need to do something about this. And I think both areas are things that we need to talk about. And yes, so that's what I was thinking while I was nodding on top of Bonnie making noise.
And Patrick, great. We actually did not bring this up in our panel at the conference, but it was such a huge topic of conversation at 7:37 p.m. Patrick wrote, as a therapist, I have to do a lot of education when I meet new people to fight that stigma. Recommending OCD as a way to get through COVID is not helpful, nor is recommending depression to someone who is just a little too happy. Great point, Patrick. Yeah, that was a big, obviously we all faced COVID, and hearing time and time again in the news that we could learn something from people with OCD, that we all wish we had OCD right now, that would keep us safe. I know I hadn't felt that stigmatized in a very long time. And just hearing people use my disorder and my source of pain for so many years of my life as a tool for staying healthy really offended me. Chris, what are your thoughts on that period of time that was occurring and how OCD was being used in that way?
Yeah, I first want to shout out to Patrick McGrath. He's definitely a light and a leader in our community. So I'm honored that he's watching. Somebody told me this statement. I really liked it. They said, hey, when the six of you go up on stage together, you guys are magical. Another person wrote us an email and just said that it was such a needed talk. I think with the biggest thing my mom and I, because my mom is always going to like the things I do, so I can't take her her opinion, but we were kind of chit-chatting about this talk because she said I really think people walked away because I didn't realize your community's in so much pain about the stigma. And I was telling her, I'm like, okay, if I look on like the physical health side of me, I have kidney stones. I was an autoimmune disease since I was a kid. A lot of people don't know I'm 80% deaf in an ear, and I have obstructive sleep apnea, or in the mental health side, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and body dysmorphic disorder on top of it. I can't do a panel on any of those disorders or those mental health things like we could have done a panel. There may be depression. I think maybe people use it a little too colloquial, but there wouldn't be the attack on those communities. I would sit there on stage and not have anything to talk about society attacking obstructive sleep apnea, or I think people misunderstand BDD, but a lot of people relate to having muscle dysmorphia or body dysmorphia. We had to cut we didn't even get time to Q&A. I mean, luckily, and Katie could talk about it, we had an interactive way to talking people. But I think what people don't understand is, like, we had an hour and a half that we filled, and we could have gone another hour and a half. And I think it was less, to me, even just about stigma, but the weaponization of our community. Like, we're a very, I don't want to say that the word isn't fragile, maybe susceptible, but we're desperate for relief. And we have somebody selling a health food product, who's not a doctor, or, you know, somebody comes out and talks about intrusive thoughts, which is so important, and you have him ridiculed to 7 million people. You know, we know what happened to Tom and to Liz about their public. So I think that was what my mom and I were just in awe. And it's like, we could have done 2 presentations at the conference on this topic. I don't know of any other, at least in my own personal medical and mental health space, that can do a presentation. So I hope what people are getting fired up about is we've got to figure out as a community and as advocates and people living with how we can stop this trajectory, because we cannot let this continue. When killers are being blamed that they have OCD and that's why they're killing people, I mean, that's just awe and shocking, and we got to have a voice. So I think that was the biggest thing that was surprising to me, is how come there's so many examples for OCD that there wouldn't be for other disorders.
I think you raised such a great point, and I love seeing you get passionate about it, Chris. And obviously we all feel the same way. And I think the sense that we all, both us on this panel and those of you commenting, work so hard to advocate and to raise awareness in an effort to help people find treatment, and to help clinicians understand what the right treatment looks like, to either learn it themselves or refer out. And it's one of those things where we have to sort of claw and scratch to make progress. And just one person with 200 million followers on Instagram can undo all of our work in a post. And that's what makes it so frustrating. And I'm not saying they undo it all the way back to the end of the beginning of time, but it's so challenging to continue to advocate when people that are in the media or that have really high profiles with lots of followers and things like that, you know, misunderstand OCD or frankly don't care, and then use it in a way that really sets us back, where we have to kind of double back and go over it again. And that's where I get super, super frustrated. And that's why it's dangerous, at least in my opinion, for these individuals to continue to use it. We have to get to a place where so many people are so educated about OCD, they understand it so well that the majority of people are offended if somebody says something and then nobody says anything anymore, because I wouldn't go around saying I'm so cancer. I would get yelled at anywhere I go, right? And we need to get to that place with OCD as well.
And I think, like, too, just to piggyback off of that and going back, I know Chris talked about this community being vulnerable, and I always think about what word to use, because I think we very much are, and we're also fierce. Like, everybody on here, y'all are fierce OCD warriors. But the disorder is tough. Like, frankly, it just sucks. It's really, really hard. And when you're in the throes of it, at least in my experience, I would have done absolutely anything to get rid of my OCD. You know, if you would have told me, if you stand on your head and spin around in circles 15 times and then run outside and jump in the water, and then, I mean, whatever you would possibly have told me, I probably would have done. And when we think about folks who are prescribing celery juice, or when we think about individuals who are stigmatizing folks for their intrusive thoughts, I think where I get really fired up is thinking about me when I was in that place, and then people who are in that place seeing that, and the fact that it isn't just stigmatizing. I really believe that it's life altering, that it's fatal. It's preventing people from getting the actual life-saving treatment that they need to move forward. And it's really an issue.
It is. And it's so Go ahead, Val. Yes, great.
I was going to share with the group. I just had an incident this week. In fact, I was going to send you guys the link, and I didn't. But is anybody in the audience familiar with the TLC reality show Doubling Down with the Doricos? And it's about a Black family with multiples, twins, quads, like 14 kids all together, and their ups and downs and their triumphs in their life. And I watched it on occasion. I think this is the 4th season. It just started. And I'm not a regular watcher of it. I just happened to tune into it last week. And the father, whose name is Dion, is making a mockery out of the fact that he thinks he has OCD. And this episode that I watched was on how to clean the toilet. he had all the children learning to clean the toilet because he's so obsessed with, neatness, and all the stigma that you could think about was in this episode. And I'm watching it as a mother, as a person of color. And all I could think of was how dangerous this is to not only my community, but the community in whole. And I tell you guys, this just happened last week. And I was so pissed off about it because it's like all this work we're doing, and here it is, this TV reality show. And even afterwards, I went to their fan page, and the father has been told he does not have OCD. And that made it even worse that he's continuing this stigma and making a mockery out of it. And I tell you guys, my OCD was just all over the place following that because I didn't know how to harness it. I was mad, but it was like I need to do something about that. But I bring up the point to say this is 2023 in July, a new show starting with all of this BS. So it's on the
TLC. Katie and I were watching 90 Day Fiance last season. One of the iterations.
We don't watch 90 Day Fiance on a regular basis. What are you talking about?
It's like intrusive thoughts. I just own it now and just say, I just embrace it. I stopped trying to fight that we do. And but if you remember that episode where that guy he cleaned his house all the time, and they spent like 3 episodes talking about oh yeah, I'm a little OCD and blah blah blah, and Katie and I kept turning to each other, just rolling our eyes.
I was losing my mind. Yeah,
it was so frustrating for sure.
If I could add something, it's really brief. Oh, go ahead, Val.
I say this was so bad because the last name is DeRico, so now they're calling it the DeRico OCD. I mean, it was just too much. But go on, Chris. Sorry.
No, I was just going to add, I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing, Val. And I think what I'm disheartened about is like TLC has very popular programming. So now millions of people are miseducated. I don't know if I'm allowed to put the book up, so maybe I won't put it up because I don't want us to get in trouble. But there's a series of books that I'm reading. I have like a fun book, and it's a mystery. It's a police detective. And I'm like, I need to get through the book before I make my judgments. But I already looked up her like email and stuff. Basically, there's a serial killer who is will kill twins. Like that's just the thing. And it's about detective. But they're saying in the book that does this killer have OCD because they have to kind of like mirror the victims, and that's what it is. And I'm just sitting there reading this like, okay, this is like the 8th book out of 10, and I really like this series, and I hope she's going to figure out a way to not get me pissed by the end of the book. But I think what bothers me and what you're experiencing, Val, is it's like when those kind of messaging come out, people who don't know individuals personally with OCD start to build a belief about individuals. And I think that's what we all worry. Those of us, I have sexual intrusive thoughts, harm thoughts, etc. We don't want to be put in a category with people that harm other people, or like Val is saying, is like, it's not funny, let's get our families around and clean toilets. Like, we're suffering, and we want society to put resources, education, and studies and things to change in the government to get people care. And so I think we shouldn't have these many dang examples. And that's what's the most frustrating, is we could talk about it for life. We could do this live stream until we all pass, because there's so many bad examples of stuff. So
absolutely, Chris. And I thank you so much, all of you, for watching, that are weighing in, giving examples. There's so many examples here that touch on so many different facets of life. Lola Mode at 7:38 p.m. wrote, people in TV shows usually are seen as being funny, or the oddballs or neat freaks. And that's absolutely accurate, from anything like Monk to As Good as It Gets. And, also is seen as a superpower. Well, you're a little bit more crafty. You can figure things out because you have OCD. You pay more attention to detail. They always tend to leave out the fact that, like, we couldn't leave our room for 18 hours a day, let alone solve a crime. But, whatever. So yes, to all of the above. Amy Lynch, I'm going to toss this out to Chris. Then I want to get to Tom on some athletic things. But 7:39 p.m., Amy writes, my son hides his hand washing or food checking from my husband because husband either jokes about it for the stigma around OCD or gets incredibly frustrated. And that's very common too. I just was wondering, Chris, as a clinician, maybe some recommendations.
Yeah, Amy, thank you for talking about this. I work with all ages, and I just happen to work with a lot of young adults for, for whatever reason. And this is something that I hear from a lot of my clients, and it really does create a barrier in their treatment. If they have a family member or someone close to them that is thinking that what they're doing is being helpful by saying things, those are making jokes, etc. What I would first do, Amy, is have a one-on-one with your husband, because what I hear from family members when I really break it down is they think they're being helpful. Your husband really wants your son to be able to get better, and maybe he doesn't know how to or doesn't have the resources. So in his head, he's like, okay, if I kind of tease my son and put him down and stuff, he'll start to get too embarrassed to do it, and he may not have a full understanding that your son can't just stop. So I always like to try to see optimism before I make assumptions. And so I know your husband loves your son, and he may think that it's being helpful, or that's his way of trying to help. And he may feel like, oh, I don't know what else to do. The second thing I always say is everybody has a medium of how they get information. It could be a podcast, it could be a YouTube video, it could be an article. Figure out how your husband likes to learn. And then the IOCDF is vast with resources, and find a resource that you think would connect with your husband. As a quick personal example, hope they don't watch this, but I'll call them out to their faces anyways. My Greek aunts did not understand my OCD. They thought my mom was being weak. They thought I wasn't tough enough, and she would get a lot of crap, to the point that she just didn't feel comfortable opening up anymore about my care. And after my mom and I were the keynote, we spoke at USC, and my family really appreciates education. And when we played that video of us speaking at USC, that was it. My family started being supportive. It's like, oh, it's education, it's USC. They wouldn't, So figure that out for your husband. What's his thing? If he sees it in an article, is there a podcast? If there's something that you can get to him, and the combination of explaining how he can be a better supporter and information in a way that he intakes it, my hope is that your husband starts to see that. My final recommendation, if you do all that and he still doesn't change and you've had talks with him, have a talk with your son and explain that sometimes even those that love us may not understand how certain mental health works, and it can be you guys as a team, and maybe just not sharing as much with his dad, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chris. Hopefully that was helpful. Felice at 7:40 p.m. I love this. I have a feeling, I don't know if she's being 100% sincere. Like I would triple down on this, but Felice wrote, when people tell me they have OCD, I first apologize that they suffer from such a horrible, debilitating illness. I offer support and then ask if they are in therapy with an OCD therapist. This seems to work so much better. People tend to back off. I don't know if you meant it as funny, and hopefully I'm not offending you, but I think that's brilliant. I'm so OCD. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. You need resources. Here, let me come with me, and just like get around a computer and go. They're like, what are you doing? And it's just such a great way. It's like I love that, Felice. I want to adopt that and use that as my go-to, because I think that's quite brilliant. Tom, well, first let me get to Phyllis's statement at 7:42 p.m. Once I went to a recertification class for medical administration taught by a nurse. At one point, she began to equate OCD with pedophilia, seemingly based on some POCD patient she had misunderstood. Yeah, and that's a really, really dangerous one, unfortunately, for a multitude of reasons. And it's sad, because a nurse should be a very safe person to be able to talk to and have the knowledge behind it to be able to, understand what that means when somebody suffers with that subtype of OCD. And just to, for those of you that may be new, or this is your first stream, when we say POCD or pedophilia OCD, we're talking about individuals that fear, they're afraid they may act on a thought of touching or wanting to touch or have feelings toward a child. Again, OCD is ego dystonic, meaning it goes against our values. It is not things we want to do. And so these are fears that are terrifying. We do not want to act on these fears or thoughts. And so, but in this particular case, those thoughts usually revolve around children, and they're very, very, very disconcerting and uncomfortable, as most OCD thoughts are. So to be honest, I always get kind of nervous when Chris is on the stream, because like he's a clinician, and I always know he can word it a little bit better than I do, because I am not a clinician. So hopefully I did that justice. I know that's a very sensitive topic, and I always want to honor that.
No,
Go
you
ahead.
handled it well. If I could say real quick, I mean, I
Yeah.
think the other thing is that we forget what I posted this in a clinician group that I'm in, and one of my clients has gotten a lot better from their OCD, and they're now back in the medical field, and they work at a psychiatric hospital, and they said there are so many patients that they see that are misdiagnosed as psychosis or having schizophrenia because of their content of thinking. Like they think they want to hurt their dad or something, and now that she knows OCD, she's able to talk to them and get them proper diagnosis. So I think we always forget as clinicians, like our clients are in the field and they're going to be the next best advocates, and they're going to go on to help. So the medical field needs a big overhaul when it comes to mental health and OCD. And I do think that that needs to be an initiative. I hope one day the foundation has so much going on, but we pick up because educating psychiatric hospitals of what OCD is so they don't get misdiagnosed and misprescribed.
Yeah, for sure. And Cash, with an H at the end, it's probably silent. Cash. It was speaking to the UK at 7:44 p.m. Mental health care system is flawed in UK because if you go to see a therapist, first caveats are, so as long as you do not talk about child abuse, etc., we alert authorities. So yeah, POCD not good. So obviously there's lots of overhauling to do worldwide. Before I get to some next statements, Tom, I'd love to talk to you about, I know you faced a lot of stigma in your line of work and athletics in general. I just want to open it up to you and touch on sort of the work that what you've experienced, and you can share as little or as much as you want, and then the work that you're doing both with the IOCDF and yourself and your podcast to reduce stigma in the space of athletics.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate it. I think honestly, this conference I think was special because this was the first time I've shared about the situation. Everybody kind of knew about the situation in 2019 when I was given the Hero Award, but I never really shared about it, went into detail about it. And obviously in our OCD in the media talk, we played an interview and a news story clip, and then we clipped all the headlines from the stories that mentioned me and from Sports Illustrated and CBS News and USA Today. So, I opened up about my OCD to a coach, and I was advocating at a very public stage at that point, and he used that to belittle me every day, and him and his staff joined in and bullying me every day, and calling me things like the next school shooter, the next Unabomber, telling me I belong in an insane asylum, and I think this conference was pretty, what I realized when I left on the plane that Monday morning was that I had a lot of trauma still from that situation, and a lot of deep down feelings that I had never. I mean, obviously, I got choked up on stage. Thank God Val came and hugged me. But I think, I think what some people that didn't know my story were definitely taken back, and I was really excited to be able to share that. And I think it was a big step for me sharing that at a pretty public stage, and being able to look at those different headlines, and stare right back at them and understand that I had a choice at that moment when I was in that situation, and that was to really use the national platform I was given to advocate and to provide awareness and provide education to people that need it, and to people that maybe never had it, and to forgive that coach and those coaches for what they did, and try to just lead with love and choose education and awareness. And obviously that has been my mission since coming on as a lead advocate. That was that situation was a very public situation where I was 20 years old. It was five years ago about, and I never expected to be in that situation, and that was kind of what really propelled me to create Anxiety in Athletes, and found the Anxiety in Athletes initiative with the IOCDF, is trying to decrease the mental health stigma in athletics. But even after that situation, I found it at my next job, as a performance coach in the collegiate setting, I was working with a lot of college athletes, and I was open about my mental health. And one of my bosses at one of the schools I was at the time told me that I couldn't tell my story, and that he needed me to pretty much just shut up about my mental health and about my journey and about my experiences, which is something that my athletes really resonated with. And that same day, I handed my resignation in. So everywhere I've been, I've felt that stigma of, especially in athletics. I talk about it all the time on Smallest Talk podcast, is that we face this stigma of macho man, be tough, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. This is the way we've always done things. This is the way we'll continue to do things. And that's such a stale style of thinking. It's such a lame style of thinking. And quite frankly, it's ignorant. And so it's providing that education and awareness to combat that ignorance.
Thank you, Tom. Chris, did you want to say? I don't want to.
No, I was just gonna. I think I was so impressed by all of us, but I mean, I was no, I don't want to say mostly. I was very impressed. I was very impressed by Tom, and I was very impressed by Liz. And I know that I think back to all of us being keynotes at the OCD SoCal virtual conference, and then Katie and Ethan came back the next year, and just seeing how open everyone is, Val talking about sharing like personal experiences. Like, I think I still tear up when I think about Liz talking about how she never knew she wanted to have kids because she didn't want to pass on OCD to them, and because of POCD. And like you and Katie talking about how like you didn't know if you guys were ever going to find love because you were in such a hard place with your OCD. And, now the wedding of the century is happening, this year. And obviously Tom just opened up personal, and we saw Liz. And I think that's what is so difficult when we think about stigmas. We're all hurting. So I think when we see it talked about so flippantly in the media or joked about, we just heard Tom talk and open up about what a hell it was for such a big period of his life. So I'm sure if Tom goes home and watches that TLC show after opening up about his personal experience, there's such a disconnect, and that's so difficult to have an experience.
Yeah, I think another thing, you raise a good point, is that I'd be lying to say if there wasn't some sort of anger in there, right? Like, I think it's super important to feel the feelings, but I think it's also important to feel those feelings and acknowledge those emotions, but understand that the way to combat the stigma and the ignorance is education and awareness, and providing a thoughtful response. The minute we act out with vengeance or with anger, is the minute that response becomes less credible, and we're just feeding into their ignorance. And so the minute we can respond with thoughtfulness and education is the minute we're going to win.
Beautifully said, Tom. And I echo Chris's sentiment, and I have no problem saying that I also, mostly agree that you and Liz. I think that sometimes we choose advocacy and sometimes advocacy chooses us. And I think that, and there's actually two sides to that too. I firmly believe that advocacy found me, and that was my mission, but I wasn't thrust into a national spotlight. I chose that. Tom, you found yourself in that. Liz found herself being thrust into a national spotlight, and what you do in those moments. And I can't imagine, and especially, in Liz's case, she was very, still suffering so much. And I know you were still going through I can't imagine, it's hard enough to advocate, let alone advocate when you're suffering, let alone advocate nationally in front of news, Barbara Walters or Sports Illustrated. So, I mean, like,
yeah, I think there was also, not to cut you off either, I think there was, say you just, light bulb thing was here, that like, I think this conference, one of the main themes that I took away from it was that we don't, Callie Warner said in one of my panels that I was on with her, we don't have to be healed to heal others. And that really resonated with me, because a long time, and I posted about it on Facebook the other day, when a memory came up from the night I won the Hero Award. And to this day, I don't feel like a hero, right? To this day, I don't feel, the people are the heroes around me that show up for the OCD community and advocate alongside me and continue to fight this awful disorder. And I think for a while, I felt that imposter syndrome of I need to be fully recovered all the time and never have any slip ups in order to be a lead advocate. And it couldn't be further from the truth. We don't need to be healed to heal other people, because that authenticity and that vulnerability is super special.
I wholeheartedly agree. Did you have something to say, Val?
Oh, no, I wrote it down. I was just thinking out loud.
No problem. Matt at 8 p.m.
Just to that, I'll be, I know we're going to keep going, but I just
No.
want to echo. Yeah. Tom was so, just you and Liz, but just was so proud of both of you at the conference. And I was literally sitting there while you were speaking, Tom. Like I just, it's so interesting because we get to advocate together, and yet I look up to you so much. I really do, just in your willingness to be so authentic and transparent. And remember looking to you, honestly, when I was like in my own journey of figuring out how do I start to speak up. And I just, what you're saying about not needing to be fully healed to heal others or to support others is just, it's so beautiful. And I think that's what it's all about. And I just want to echo, I feel like an imposter a lot of times, and I have to really kind of keep that in check with what I do and make sure to not act on that. Even there was a support group I was running last week that it came up where somebody said, well, I feel like an imposter when I do this. And I was like, well, I feel like an imposter when I'm running this group pretty much every single time. Right. And it doesn't mean that we have it all together when you watch us on these streams. And I think that's never what recovery is about. It's about continuing to navigate OCD, but doing our best not to have it in the driver's seat, because we care about you all so much, and because we care about the lives that we've built and wanting to keep moving towards our values. So I think, Tom, it's even more impactful and so brave for you to get up there when there still is a lot there that's so challenging, and you're still so willing to share it with the community to let other people know they're not alone. And you are really healing people and saving lives through that.
You. Yeah, poor Amy had a lot to talk about in therapy that week. Amy, this conference opened up a whole other deep-rooted bag of issues I forgot about.
And
I will say, I went back from the conference to my therapist too. It was like, there's some stuff we need to talk about, the things that I talked about that I hadn't. Yeah.
You'll never know how many people you have helped with that bravery, because in all of us in the stuff we do, we'll never know how many people we're reaching. And it's probably a good thing. That way we don't have egos. But yeah, that was.
I agree.
Val, at that point, it's funny because I see Erica McCoy commenting, and people came up to me, and it's funny because a lot of people will talk to me about Liz because we do the streams together, but a lot of people talk to me about you guys all too, and they watch a lot of our stuff, and so people were coming up and being like, "Oh, Chris, the work you do is so great. Oh my God, Val did this," and Ethan, etc. But it's funny because meeting people like Erica and meeting so many people at the conference, I hope all these other advocates, and somebody was saying earlier that they don't feel like they can advocate because their son doesn't want to know. Your son will get better, and you will be an amazing advocate for your son. There was somebody else there, Rob, who was on a TV show, and I love Dr. Jenny Key, but he recorded a show. I was telling this to somebody, but I just don't think anymore there's going to be this one celebrity that comes across and talks about his OCD and it changes the game. We saw that with cancer, we saw that with HIV, but I think it would have happened already. And so now my faith has turned to people like Erica and the people on this panel right now. And even if you just tell a friend, tell a cousin, somebody what OCD really is, I think that's going to be the shift. And like you said, Val, it's like people won't realize that down the road, someone's going to come back and say, when you talked to me about OCD, it was the change. So I think that's something for the community to remember, is it's not helpless if there's stigma out there. We all have a voice. And even if we only touch 6 people, 6 more people that know about it than did it before.
Beautifully said, Chris. I think we all absolutely look up to one another and all of you, and learn from each other every day and become better. I know I'll cry if I get too much into it, but I know Val taught me a lot about a lot of things that I didn't know, just in befriending Val and learning about her story. I seem to learn more about all of your stories as we continue on this journey together, more details that I didn't know, more hardships that you faced, more challenges that you overcame. And I know with Val, just from my place of privilege, where I've become more self-aware. And Val, I remember the first conversation we ever had, and she she said something so powerful to me, and I've never forgot it, which was like, you know, I'm Black and I have a mental illness, you know, and it's like, I get chills when she said it, because I never thought about that before. And like, that's just where I came from, and I've never forgotten it, and I'll never forget that again. And thinking about the double stigma of associated with that in this country and what she's had to face. And then later on, I heard about, you know, being bused to segregated schools and all of that, and what you've had to fight, you know, your entire life, and your bravery in coming out, you know, and being front facing now as a amazing, beautiful older woman, you know, in standing up for, you know, individuals with OCD, you know, over the age of 30. And, but also, you know, of color and all of those things. And so like, I know that you've completely changed my life, my views, you know, and my own ignorance, just not knowing about things. And like, you've got a friend and a warrior in me for life. And I think we've all, and that's the beautiful thing. I mean, the lesson here is just whatever in advocacy you want to do, it's like, it's all out there, and it's just connections and friendships and growing and listening, which I am not the best listener. I'm a talker, but I try to be a listener. Go ahead, Val.
No, I said we're family.
Yeah, for sure. We are family.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Val. Real quick, I just wanted to read Matt's statement at 8 p.m. He wrote, I completely resonate with Tom with the stigma I experienced with my past job. You're an absolute warrior and true hero. I love your mantra with turn struggle into strength. So I actually wanted to, I marked a comment here. Matt, continuing on Matt, at 7:45 p.m., Matt wrote, I remember earlier this year when someone on Instagram posted a fully believed that intrusive thoughts was demonic, that was so stigmatizing and triggering for the OCD community, especially for someone with religious OCD. That person who posted that had no idea how damaging that post could be for everyone with OCD. Matt, I'm not sure if you're referring to the Luke Combs, famous U.S. country singer situation or not, but I thought I'd hand this over to Katie to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, I think he was referring to that. I saw that. And Matt, thank you so much for bringing this up. This was one that I know I was talking earlier about calling in and calling out, and I do a lot of calling in. This was one where I was on the bandwagon of let's call it out, because it was really hurtful. It was really harmful. Luke Combs was so incredibly brave to open up about his OCD, about his taboo intrusive thoughts, about his scrupulosity, and just, I think everything we've been talking about tonight, the way that destigmatizes, and him using his voice to do that was so incredibly brave on a podcast among some other spaces. And there was an individual that I don't particularly want to give voice to. It's funny, I have pictures of him up and can't remember his name, nor do I really want to, that started calling out Luke Combs and saying that, oh, this isn't really OCD. He must be possessed by a demon, and started making all of these videos pointing out, here's why he's demon possessed and watch out and all sorts of stuff. Incredibly, incredibly harmful, first off. But then a lot of the community started responding to him. And he was pretty hateful to people in our community and in the chat. And his girlfriend or fiance or whatever it was pretty hateful as well. And I was working with folks with scrupulosity that they were getting some pretty hateful messages for standing up for this. And it really, yes, Erica speaking, yeah, his wife, thank you, came for her on Instagram. And I know a lot of us were posting videos letting folks know this is what scrupulosity is. And it felt very personal for me and for a lot of folks. Going back to the vulnerable piece in this community, that everyone is such a rock star, amazing OCD warrior. We're also in a space of vulnerability when we're navigating OCD, and when OCD latches on to the things that are the most important to us. And I see that every day in my work with scrupulosity across faith traditions. And this was so painful because this person had a lot of followers, and I was watching folks I was working with see this video, and that had been doing really great with their exposures with their clinicians, that started to be even more afraid than they were before about demonic possession or about obsessions that they had been able to lean into because someone was saying ERP is wrong, don't do that. It was a lot for folks in the community to overcome. I watched people take steps back personally in their treatment. And frankly, that pissed me off because I'd watched folks take so many steps forward. And this person, I think, did not realize that what they were doing was so detrimental to some of the most vulnerable individuals. At the same time, I'm so glad this got brought up because it was another fantastic example of where I was so proud of our community, like Erica, who's speaking about this in the chat. I saw so many folks in our Faith in OC-SIG and on our Faith in OCD task force make videos in response to this, that while they were not necessarily received really well by this person or by his wife, were received really well by the rest of the community and offered another space to talk about what scrupulosity actually is, how we can address faith and OCD. And if we're finding a silver lining, which there is not really on the stigma side at all, I will say I ended up having a few people reach out that didn't know they had scrupulosity because of the videos that people in our community posted in response to the stigma. So even folks like, I know, Erica, you're mentioning this in the chat, if you felt like, oh, I put something out there in response to this really hateful thing, was it making a difference? It was, even though that person had however many followers they did. All of you doing the responses that you did actually helped other folks get treatment. And I think that's what we have to continue to know and continue to do, that it's not just a one and done kind of piece, that we're all on this team together to continue to respond to these things.
Absolutely. Chris, did you have something you want to add?
No, I just coughed, but when Katie was talking and reading Matt's post, I think as a clinician, what's really difficult is I will see people with contamination and checking get treatment a lot quicker than people with taboo intrusive thoughts. And it's because of statements like that and the stigma out there that does not discuss, sorry, that allergies. They, advocates feel a lot more cautious opening up about intrusive thoughts, whether it's harming children, harming pets, could I harm myself, or any type of taboo thoughts. And so we just see that people who have that subtype take a lot longer to get to treatment when we're working with clients. And so I think I just wanted to add that addition, is not only is it hurting people's spirit, like you're saying, Katie, but it's preventing people from getting care. And I also see it a lot. There's a lot of substance use disorder treatment centers here in Orange County, California. And a lot of them are reaching out and saying, I think our clients have OCD, because they finally open up about these thoughts and they're petrified to talk to a clinician about it in fear of retaliation or medication or locked up or something like that. So I think that's another part that we have to continue to talk about, is how do we get the messaging of taboo intrusive thoughts out there, that society will understand and embrace it, so we get more people to come to treatment who have that subtype.
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you. I also want to add to Amy's comment, and I know Chris already addressed it, Amy, about your advocacy, but I want to make sure also that Chris isn't dying on camera. But I know a lot of parents that are in similar positions, and there are ways to advocate without calling out your son or even that your family. I know individuals with smaller kiddos in schools that go around and hand out, IOCDF brochures to schools or talk about OCD education. You're just passionate about it and want to increase mental health awareness in different schools. Hi, Bonnie. And so, there's actually a number of ways that you can advocate in the meantime, where you don't at all have to disclose that it's, that it's your child or even your family, just that it's a cause near and dear to your heart and you want to help education awareness around OCD. So that's always an option as well. I saw a comment and somebody wrote, and I thought it was in response to a comment, but I can't find the original comment, but Lola at 7:57 p.m. wrote, that must be traumatic to get misdiagnosed with psychosis instead of OCD. I don't know if, Lola, you're referring to somebody's comment. I didn't see it. I will tell you that I had that wonderful experience, and it's absolutely awful. After 17 years of seeing 10 of the wrong therapists that didn't do exposure response prevention, and then moving to anything I could find, hypnosis, past life regression, energy healing. You name it. I would have had drinking the celery juice. It doesn't matter. I ended up in a psychiatric hospital because I was so dysregulated and unhelped. And the doctor there, who was the head of it, basically told my parents and me that I did not have OCD, that I was psychotic, and that I needed to basically be in a place forever. And I was just going what? Like, it was so awful. So yes, it is very traumatic, but the reality is oftentimes OCD can present so strongly the way we communicate our OCD to other people, especially when we're uneducated about OCD. I don't feel like it's our fault that I said, I did X, or I think I'm going to, or my OCD says such and such. And doctors hear that and go, oh, you're hearing voices in your head. Oh, you 100% believe that. It's like, no, I'm dysregulated and upset and I'm freaked out. And that's how I'm verbalizing it. If we really want to analyze, I believe it 98%. And then 2% is like, nah, that's ridiculous. But like, no, I'm sorry, I didn't verbalize it that way. So I wish, like, it shouldn't fall on the individual and the patient at the time to be responsible to make sure to properly educate a healthcare provider on our diagnosis so they can treat us properly. It's really frustrating, and I feel fortunate that I eventually found help, learned that I wasn't in fact psychotic, and it was still OCD, and to be able to get the proper help. But yeah, it's awful and traumatic. And when I saw that, it kind of stood out to me, and I relate to that. I'll read Rob. I know Chris, I didn't know if you were going to get to the comment. Rob at 8:05 p.m. wrote, I kept my OCD a secret, but all from my original family. I went to McLean about 24 years ago for treatment. A television crew was there at one point to record a show about OCD treatment. I later found out that a cousin had watched the show when it was broadcast. Suddenly I appeared on the screen joking with Dr. Janicki. So my secret was out, but it all worked out okay. And sometimes advocacy chooses you.
Yeah, no, that was how I got into advocacy is I had just finished body dysmorphic disorder treatment after my OCD treatment, and my psychiatrist had gotten reached out by a national television show. It was Montel Williams at the time. And he said, hey, would you be open to talking about BDD? They want to do a show on it. And I feel like you're stable and it wouldn't be triggering. Whereas a lot of my clients aren't. Would you be open? I said, yeah. So I thought I had like a month to decide. It was a Tuesday and we flew out on Wednesday and the show was recorded Thursday, and they ended up having me back a second time. And they had me do exposures on camera, and I had to do stuff in front of mirrors. Nobody told me that. It literally happened live while we were live on the show. But just like the comment, I was so nervous when I got back, but people flooded me with comments, and I was like, well, I guess this is like my new life now, right? Being open, but I wouldn't take it back for the world. I think maybe if I never had that experience, I probably would have gone to a different field, et cetera. So sometimes we're not ready, but like you're saying, Ethan, I think advocacy decides when we're ready and says, well, we're going to have you do it anyway. So,
Yeah. Sometimes jumping in the deep end is not a bad thing. We come out the other side stronger. There's something I've always said, and we've always said it about, just to be honest, when I say I want to make it very clear that all the insight that I always share week in and week out, I learn from everyone else. I feel like I could give citations after I make statements because I'm just repeating what other amazing, brilliant, both advocates and clinicians say. I don't know that I have much original thought of my own. So, well,
and Ethan, you're pretty convinced that everything I post on Instagram, I stole from you.
No, that is true, but I stole it from everyone else. So it's just, we're paying it forward. But to Chris's point, I will say that I have never met an individual with OCD or related disorder, an individual in our community that hasn't embodied an inner strength that is truly remarkable. And having discovered that in myself, and I know everyone here will be able to say the same thing. When your feet get put to the fire, suddenly there's something that you find within yourself to pull yourself back up that you didn't necessarily know was there. And I just want to let you all know, if you're feeling helpless or hopeless, or feeling like, there's no shot, no chance, it's exhausting, frustrating, all of the things that we know. If you're in this chat, if you're in this community, I know for a fact you have that ember, that strength that sits, and you may not realize it or see it, but trust us when we say it's there, because I literally have never met anyone in our community that doesn't have that, and try to deep down and find that strength and pull yourself up and let people help you as well. When Chris spoke about, kind of stepping forward, embracing the advocacy piece, I think that comes from the same place, like Tom deciding to use the platform, and all the times Val's advocated for herself, and Katie, in her role as a school chaplain and being willing to come forward to, 2,700 families, and Chris and all the ways that he has given back, both in his in his personal and professional career, dedicating his career to OCD and related disorders. So please know that we are all reflections of each other, and we're all the same in this journey. Our journeys are unique, but isn't it fascinating that Valerie and Chris and myself and Tom and Katie all came from these completely different paths and different life starts, and yet we're all here on this town hall together, right? So we all meet in the same place because of this.
You're my people now. You're my people.
It is 100% our peeps. We have 4 minutes left. So with that, I would love to go around and get final thoughts on anything you want around stigma, navigating stigma, what we have to change, call to action for people watching. I'm going to start with Katie.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't make
Bonnie,
me
what do you think, Bonnie? Do you have any ideas? Yeah. Oh no, she drew a blank there. So, I mean, I think this stigma topic, like Chris said earlier, we could talk about this for years and years and years and years. But I think I would like along those lines just to let everybody know that the work that you are doing in advocacy makes a difference. And whether you are considering that to be big or small, I think all of it's big. You being here and showing up in the chat tonight and supporting others, that is advocacy. You are helping to destigmatize OCD. If you are writing a blog or sharing something anonymously or talking to a neighbor and saying, even to the comment earlier that I loved of saying, you have OCD? let me talk to you about treatment, whatever that is. You are making a difference. And I just want you all to know that we are so incredibly thankful to be on this journey with you. It is such I don't know why I'm feeling all emotional tonight, but it's such a true and just deep honor each and every day. And if you're in a space of doing advocacy, we're proud of you. We're with you. If you are also in a space where you're on the journey and it's feeling really hard, please know that we have all been there and that we have been through ups and downs and that it does get better. It can get better through evidence-based treatment, and that you are deserving of a big, beautiful, awesome life in recovery, in advocacy, and in all the things that you want to do.
Well said, Katie. Chris.
Yeah, I just want to say it's something my mom always reminds me because she's like, I'm not on social media. People watching right now, I think sometimes they think, they see the 5 of us or 6 of us with Liz McAvell and expect that we have to be on podcasts or we have to do live streams to advocate. And that's just not accurate. There's so much ground level stuff you can do. And I really like your comment to that mom, Ethan, is like, maybe your son isn't ready for you to advocate, but there's ways to do it, or there's ways when he's ready. But us spreading the word of what OCD really is going to be the change. I do want to spend my time to plug. We do have a virtual conference coming up. I know we talked about it a little bit. People may not know, but I'm vice president of OCD Southern California, and we used to have a virtual conference at the start of the year. And the IOCDF said, hey, why don't we combine them? So this is the first year, so we're real excited. So there's stuff for young adults, people with OCD, family members, parents of kids, parents of adult kids. There's a lot of really advanced talks for clinicians that I've gone to a lot of conferences, and there's talks for beginning clinicians, and there's evening support groups and activities. So if you can make it, it's October 21st and 22nd. And you can register right now up on the IOCDF's website. So go to that. But I guess my last thought is just a moment of optimism. I know that most of us have seen people getting better quicker. We see a kid get a hero award because they got treatment so young. We feel like we're going in the right direction. I just hope we continue with that, because I cannot wait for the day where somebody gets an OCD diagnosis and then gets treatment the next day right after a symptom. That would be the dream. So I'm going to be optimistic.
I share that. I think we all share that dream, Chris. Tom.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what this whole panel's been about, is that this community's time and time again just shows up for each other. And I thought this conference was there was a different vibe in a good way. It just felt I didn't think the community could get more inclusive, but it just felt so welcoming and inclusive, and just felt like everybody was connecting so well. And I think just, advocacy comes in different forms, and there's always space for you in this community and in OCD advocacy.
Thank you, Tom. And Val, I thought I'd round it out with your wise and thoughtful thoughts.
Yeah, I think stigma might always be with us, but we can change that narrative. We all have voices. I know there's a familiar saying, each one teach one, because we never know what, by speaking to somebody, that one person might go share it to 100 people. Where I got caught up personally in counting the sheep, our job is to teach the sheep, because that sheep will go out and do the rest of our work. And so if you
Oh no.
No.
I want to know the end of the story.
I'm like on the edge of my seat.
I know, it was like she was preaching. It was good.
Yeah, it was good. But we like to leave everyone with uncertainty, so maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. Go ahead.
Oh,
Val.
they're
There it is.
my phone rung.
They're trying you
I
back.
think you're ringing. I think you're ringing again.
Quick, call Val. I think she'll pop back on in literally 3 seconds. There she is.
Yeah. Wow, you're good.
Go ahead, Val.
We want to hear the end. You cut off with that we have to teach the sheep.
Val is popular tonight.
right.
Nobody calls any of the rest of us.
Yeah, we haven't been interrupted once. I will add real quick. I want to echo Chris's sentiment about what advocacy looks like. This is something that we always talk about. And it's one of the reasons I'll bring it right back to the conference recap, which is one of the great things that we love about the conference is the opportunity to talk with people one-on-one. And we always talk about, like, I subscribe that in its essence, advocacy is literally sharing your story with one other person. That is the essence. Advocacy boiled down to its simplest point. And I always found my most meaningful and memorable conversations around advocacy are during those conversations. And the conference really provides an amazing opportunity to have a ton of those conversations just in the hallways and lobbies and things like that. So it's always why it feels so amazing. Val, I'll let you finish your wrap up. Katie said you were preaching, so we're not going to interrupt that.
No, I was just going to say, we can't get caught up on the numbers and all. Our job is to just spread the message, and the message will do the work. So each one teach one.
The message will do the work. I love that. So with that, hang tight. We have lots of good announcements, and I know you had some questions about programming, so we'll get to that. First of all, I want to thank Chris, Katie, Valerie, and Tom for being on the live stream tonight. Their family, they're incredible, as are all of you. I also want to thank Brennan behind the scenes for keeping the lights on. I don't know if I'll keep using that. That's like my new line for live streams. I don't know.
I really like it.
Been
But
saying that for like 2 years.
Shush, Katie. No one knows what you're saying. What, Chris?
I was gonna say I like that, but you should have like a rotating one too. It's like
Yeah.
I don't have one more for you, but I'm just saying you should have a rotating one.
What he's
Keep
saying
people on
is
their
think of
toes.
something even better,
Yeah,
but
I'm thinking
also
something
not
better.
going to provide that recommendation.
Let's
For sure.
workshop that. Let's workshop that. No, I liked that. I liked keeping the lights
We can
on.
workshop it. Also, of course, thank you to the IOCDF. A couple of announcements. Walks are taking place across the country. You can visit iocdf.org/walk to find a walk near you. Also, as Chris said, he stole my ending. Online OCD conference registration is open. You can visit onlineocdconference.org to register. This year's online conference will feature 2 days of virtual programming for the entire OCD and related disorders community. Also, some additional streams this week. So if you didn't get enough of us, tomorrow we've got an Ask the Experts with, I think he's on this side, with Chris Tronsden. I think he has a special on this side with a special guest. So we look forward to that. And then on Thursday, we have a young adult IG live. That's at 8 p.m. So if that speaks to you, you won't want to miss that. This live stream is one of many. You can view the entire schedule at iocdf.org/peace of mind. And as always, if you need resources, you can visit iocdf.org. Also be sure to subscribe, like, follow on whatever platform you're on so you get notified when we go live and you can tune in. So until that, thank you again, everyone, for being here. Thank you for your amazing advocacy in the comment thread and your comments and supporting one another and spending your Tuesday night with us. Stay safe, stay vigilant, feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook. and we'll see you tomorrow, next week.
Bye,
And
everybody.
keep the lights on.
What's the hotel company that says we'll leave the light on for you?
Oh, Motel 6. And that is a
Yeah,
bunch
we're
of
like
crap.
Motel 6.